on the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to News Channel 5 Plus and OpenLine. We are live here on a Tuesday night. I'm Rory Johnston, and we send out a big happy birthday to Mr. Ben Hall, the usual host of OpenLine. Gets a night off for his birthday. I hope he's having a nice dinner out with his family, but glad to be here tonight as we discuss an important topic once again, and it's called OpenLine because we open up our phone lines and we want you to be involved and call in at 737+. Tonight's topic is restoring voting rights for felons. What do you think of that idea? I know what my guest thinks about it. Her name is Gicola Lane, and she is with a group called Restore Your Vote Tennessee. Gicola, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you taking the time on a beautiful night outside. We're in here talking about it is an important topic that we want to talk about. 737+ phone lines are open right now. That's 737-7587, everyone, if you'd like to join in the conversation. So let's talk about this. The majority of states right now, felons who have served their time and are out and back into society have their voting rights restored, but there are a handful of states where that's not the case, correct?
That's correct.
Including Tennessee.
That's correct.
Tell us what's going on in Tennessee right now.
Well, in Tennessee right now, it's a very complicated process.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't know what the process is and kind of get the runaround sometimes when they are trying to get their rights restored. So there's a lot of dispelling myths about voter rights here in Tennessee. There were periods of time in our history where someone actually never lost the right to vote, even if they were convicted of a felony. Mm-hmm. Now, after 1981, that got a little drilled down more, and you do have to go through the process of getting a certificate of restoration. And so that's something that I've been helping a lot of people with, over 100 people this summer, while I've been working on the Restore Your Vote project here in Tennessee. But it's very complicated, and you have to go through certain officials from the State Department to be able to get that signed off.
Now, the actual group Restore Your Vote, this is kind of a combination of nonprofits or civic organizations that have come together to try to help. Is that right?
So the Restore Your Vote project is actually done through the Campaign Legal Center, which is a nonprofit itself.
Right.
And they work on, allowing everyone to participate in our democracy. But there are several groups here in Nashville and across the state of Tennessee who has been working on this and will be working on this far after this specific project of the Campaign Legal Center. Now,
I've read a little bit about that, and you just mentioned, and what I'm reading here is that it really is an onerous process. Tell us a little bit about what people have to do in order to get that certificate.
Sure. So here in Tennessee, there are several things that you have to do. The most important thing is figuring out the date of the conviction. That's really what tells us which pathway forward that we have to be able to really move forward with you and what type of felony conviction it was, because there are some that's ineligible and then there are some that's eligible, except between this period of January 15th, 1973 and May 17th, 1981, which is the period of time I was speaking of where no one actually lost their right to vote in the state of Tennessee. Outside of that, it's a little grayer and you have to get a little bit specific and drill down, but most of the people that I come in contact with fall after that date. Mm-hmm. And so after that date, you do have to get a certificate of restoration.
So it's confusing.
It can be very confusing, yes.
Right. Some of the things that I've read here, obviously, the statistics that were provided, the current law denies 8.2% of the entire statewide voting age population the right to vote. That includes 21% of black voting age population, and that's why a lot of people just simply call this is voter suppression. Absolutely. We do believe it's a tactic of voter suppression. What is being done as far as in the state legislature? I know that Brenda Gilmore would like to make some changes. Absolutely. Well, she put up a bill, and then there was some other bills that were put forth, but kind of taken to summer session. There is nonpartisan support on this issue here in Tennessee, and of course the Campaign Legal Center is a nonprofit, so we are also nonpartisan, but we just really want Tennessee to move forward with this in a healthy way so that we can have participatory governance and a participatory democracy. And right now we're disenfranchising over 421,000 people in the state of Tennessee, and that needs to change. And a large group of that, it ends up being disproportionately impacting black voters.
Absolutely.
Right?
That's correct.
There's a great story here in the paperwork that was sent to me. David Dobson, a Nashville man who couldn't make any progress. He was trying to get his voting rights restored, so he reached out to his congressman, who's Jim Cooper here in Nashville, and his one of the people who helped out basically said it shouldn't take big attorneys with big connections and a lot of money too to simply do something, as to say, hey, I've served my time, I've been released, maybe I've gotten a job, I'm trying to get settled and kind of re-enter society, and now I would like to have my right to vote restored.
Yep. So I actually met David Dobson after he emailed Congressman Cooper's office. It actually was kind of forwarded around to a couple different people. Councilman Freddie O'Connell got it to me, and I had been doing a couple trainings around town, and people who work on his team actually had trained with me, and so they knew how to go through this process and recognize the steps. And so I got this email of this long journey that he's been on pretty much over half a year, and he could not get in contact with the Board of Probation and Parole. He could not get anyone to respond to phone calls, emails, and so that was the first thing he could think to do. But David pays taxes. He's been off of probation for years, and he had to actually reach out to attorney Daniel Horowitz, who I'm also connected with, and that's how I learned that he was able to, get the paperwork in time for him to be able to vote in the mayoral election, and that's a problem, because a lot of the people that I am helping may not know an attorney like Daniel Horowitz, or may not know any attorneys at all to be able to get help.
So Brenda Gilmore says that she will file legislation that would immediately restore voting rights for people convicted of felonies once they've served their sentence. And like you mentioned, she sponsored similar legislation last year, but it failed to gain much traction. Why do you think it's failing to gain traction? And I know the ACLU supports this effort.
Right. Well, I think it's failing to gain traction because there's not a lot of people at our legislature who has been impacted by this directly. And until you know people who have been directly impacted by this, and you know their stories and what they've went through and how complicated it is after you've served your time,
right.
I think you can be a little disconnected from the issue itself.
All right, we have some phone calls coming in. We do appreciate you calling in as always. We will start with Mike on line 1. Hello, Mike, welcome. Go ahead, Mike.
Yo.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike, you're on. How are you?
Yeah, so I was just wondering, like, the same way how they let the immigrants to vote, and now we start seeing them being deported. I'm wondering, like, for the felons, now we're able to vote. Will we start getting deported back just to get records of everybody? Because this is what societies have turned to and looked at. It makes us worry.
You mean sent back actually to prison?
Yeah, or just start being even more on files and just keeping files of everybody.
Okay, let's listen into what Gicola has to say.
Well, you definitely cannot be sent back to prison, Mike,
Right.
for restoring your right to vote. This is legal. There is a process. This is a law. The certificate of restoration is sent to the State Board of Elections. And so they do a background check. They make sure all the information that we have filled out is correct. And there actually is a probation officer or a parole officer who has to sign on off of that certificate of restoration. So no, you would not be at risk of going back to prison. Of course, they will have your information because there's voter files on every person who is
Right.
registered to vote in Tennessee.
Interesting. All right, we're going to go ahead and take our first break right here, and I know we've got another caller holding, and if you would like to call in and ask some questions or make some comments, that phone number there on the screen, 615-737-7587, or just the word plus, because we're on News Channel 5 Plus. See how that works? We'll be right back on a Tuesday night. Stay with us.